Most of the work we're going to do to be ready for pandemic 2, I call this pandemic 1, most of the work we'll do to be ready for that are also the things we need to do to minimize the threat of bioterrorism. To be ready for pandemic 2, I call this pandemic 1.
We'll have to prepare for the next one. That, I'd say is will get attention this time. We'll have to prepare for the next one. That, I'd say is will get attention this time.
Expliciet werk je al om ons in ieder geval op weg te helpen mocht er een tweede pandemie komen. Maar eigenlijk als ik goed volg wat je al jaren zegt, dan is de kans dat een tweede pandemie komt heel erg groot.
Ja, daar is wel consensus over. Dat is ook, het staat ook al een tijd lang in het 10-jarenplan van de Wereldgezondheidsorganisatie. 10-jarenplan van de Wereldgezondheidsorganisatie. Dus daar stond, bereid je voor de komende 10 jaar, er gaat een grote infectieziektecrisis komen. Nou, dit was jaar 1. Dus,
at least this year, we do need more money. But we don't just need more money for vaccines for children eventually. We need more money to plan for the second pandemic. There's going to be another pandemic. We need more money to plan for the second pandemic. There's going to be another pandemic.
This is a site for the UK government. It's called Contracts Finder, and it's a place where the UK government posts contracts that it wants companies to bid for. So in other words, if they have a need for certain services, then they'll make it known on this website, and that companies from the UK and perhaps even abroad as well can bid for the contract. Now, this specific contract has a very nice name to it: Testing Solutions Dynamic Purchasing System. So what are they testing for here? Well, I think we're going to see in just a moment. Let's scroll down. As you can see right here in this second bullet point, this is about purchasing polymerase chain reaction equipment, PCR equipment. Now we know those have been used in the COVID pandemic. This is for the UK government, and the value of the contract is not 2,000, not 2 million, but £2 billion. Now, let's scroll down. The contract closing date is June 2024. In other words, the British government wants a contract so it can get hold of £2 billion worth of lateral flow and PCR testing kits, and so that sometime that contract will be fulfilled when the British government needs it. So why would you be planning to spend £2 billion on getting these types of tests? Once, because the whole COVID thing is pretty much over with, especially in the UK now. So in other words, they're planning ahead for something. What are they planning for? If we look at the description, it says that the UK wants to get an ongoing supply of lateral flow tests and polymerase chain reaction kits. Therefore, they want to test for something after this date of June 2024. They're inviting applications from companies, and they are going to, as we go down here, they want to have kits that are not exclusively nasopharyngeal, i.e. ones you stick up the nose, that that have the big long sort of what we call cotton bud in the UK or Q-tip in the US that's filled with nanofibers and other things, and perhaps even graphene too. And they don't want kits that are also exclusively oropharyngeal, which are ones where they stick down your throat. So in other words, they might want other types of lateral flow kits, okay, that involve some other type of testing, some other type of perhaps secretions from the body. So this was created on 13th of June 2022. The contract bidding is open for 2 years. What are they planning for, the UK government, that requires £2 billion worth of PCR and lateral flow equipment?
What we do know, if we compare that date of June 2024 with existing pandemic scenarios, that date is about 6 months before the potential start of the SPARS pandemic. You're looking at the front cover of the original report here that was published by researchers associated with Johns Hopkins Centre for Health Security. The SPARS pandemic scenario was designed to discuss an allegedly fictional situation of a pandemic between the years 2025 and 2028. This fits very nicely also with the WHO's virologist claim that there is a plan for 10 years of continual infectious disease outbreaks. So, for example, we've had this COVID thing, 2020, 2021, and of course also we've had this monkeypox and whatever else they're going to claim is the decade of infectious disease outbreaks. Going back to the SPARS plan now, this scenario document is intended to help governments anticipate communication problems with citizens about something called medical countermeasures. Medical countermeasures are basically treatments and jabs. So in the case of COVID, think of remdesivir as the treatment, and obviously then think of the vaccines as the jabs. In other words, the point of this document is that they're trying to decide to help governments to overcome resistance to citizens going ahead and having medical treatments and vaccines for another deliberately created pandemic. In the 2010 Rockefeller report, which predicted many aspects of the 2020 pandemic, there were 4 possible futures stated by the researchers. And you guessed it, the researchers did exactly the same thing with the SPARS pandemic document. In other words, they're using the same strategy in the SPARS pandemic report that was used in the 2010 Rockefeller report that said we would have lockdowns and a whole bunch of other things which actually did happen in 2020. So in other words, we could suggest that we need to give the idea of another engineered pandemic after 2024 some degree of credence.